let's bring in now our paper reviewers, Afua and Dawn, who have patiently been waiting with us all morning. Guys, thank you so much for staying with us. Let's get right into it, because we obviously don't have endless amounts of time, but we do want to dig into some of the papers right now. So let's go inside the Daily Telegraph, Afua. This is your one from page 18. And this is a story about Prince Charles and Camilla.
Yeah, so Prince Charles and Camilla are embarking on their tour of Canada next week. This will be the 19th time that Prince Charles has visited Canada. It will be the 5th time for Camilla. And this headline really is talking about can Charles and Camilla, can this tour save the Commonwealth? Now, this tour is taking place on the backdrop of Canada Day last year in July 2021, where you have protesters actually pulling down statues of Queen Elizabeth and Queen Victoria because of the discoveries of mass graves of Indigenous children who were murdered during their reign. It's also taking place in the backdrop of the Black Lives Matter movement over the past 2 years, the resurgence of that since 2013, its inception, and of course the royal tours by Kate and William in the Caribbean and Prince Edward and the Countess of Wessex, Sophie, that took place in the Caribbean in the last 4 weeks or so, where you've had island nations talking about welcoming independence, about taking on those votes, about removing the Queen as head of state. Now, those tours and this one was supposed to gear up the world for the Jubilee. Was supposed to be a celebration as we move forward to the Queen's Jubilee next month in June. But actually what has happened is you're having more and more of these discussions about island nations becoming republics and about reparations. So when it comes to this particular tour of Canada, I think this will be a little bit different. Now, it's said that this tour is going to be about connecting with Indigenous peoples and also about finding a more sustainable way to live, something that we know Prince Charles is very passionate. Now, when it comes to Canada, they're always very well received. So I think this visit might be a little bit different. But these visits, these royal tours, are under so much scrutiny that I think royals are really going to have to change the way in which they do these royal tours, in which they visit different countries, and the way they kind of exhibit themselves when they go and visit these countries. I think this one might be slightly different. I think they will be well received in Canada, and I think this will probably give the royal family a boost before the Jubilee in June.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Let's go to the front page of the Daily Star, Dawn. This is your old paper with a story about the numbers of Brits who are now searching for visas for Australia to try and escape the tough life we have here. Oh my God.
Well, I thought we'd have a bit of fun on a Saturday morning, Kamali. Yeah, I mean, the Daily Star are having fun with this story. And they've done an upside-down page one with all the typical Australian cliches, kangaroos, kookaburras, neighbours, etc. But evidently, there is a 670% rise in online searches for Australian visas amongst us Brits. And that is because we want to escape the inflation, the cost of living crisis that we are all going to go through now and in the future, and God knows for how long. We all think going to Australia is a good idea. However, the cost of living in Australia isn't great either, and they have the worst inflation in 25 years at 5.1% at the moment. Now, predictions are that ours is going to go to, 10% in this country, which is another high. But in Australia at the moment, a head of lettuce is £3.15. Which is more than a McDonald's. Inflation is that bonkers. But evidently we all think that we would be better off in Australia, and we'd obviously rather be sitting on a beach in the sun rather than in the grey that we're currently having in the UK.
My friends down there buying houses in Sydney say it's just as expensive as London, so I don't think they're really escaping to anything. But you're right, at least the sun will be shining, but it gets very hot. Got to wear your sunblock down in Australia. All right, let's keep it kind of funny, Dawn. We're going to go with another one of yours now inside the Times here. I'll just read out the headline because it's brilliant, and there's a couple of words in there that some people might not understand, but may be offensive to some people too. Boomers take courses to manage millennials. Go on, what's all this about?
Sorry, and I'm going to have to speak very, very slowly to you and Afua because you're obviously quite a lot younger than me. Right, anyways, experts say that millennials, that is, just checking, she says, furiously here, millennials, what are millennials?
Born after 2000, isn't it? 97?
That's Yeah. People born between 1981 and 1996.
Okay.
Millennials and Generation Z, that's 1997 to 2012.
There you go, yeah.
You're not speaking the same language as us boomers. That's me, by the way. I'm just not going to go into the dates because it's old. But basically, this is actually serious. Dr. Elizabeth Michelle, she's a psychologist, and she gives workshops, I'm not making this up, on how to handle millennials if you're an old bird like me. And she says boomers are desperate to be able to work more productively with younger folk, you two, and we find it very frustrating because our language is very different and the way we behave is different. And one thing she points out is that employers get very frustrated because boomers will if you have to start work at 8 o'clock, for example, boomers will turn up at 7:45 and think that's the right thing, whereas millennials and Gen Z will turn up at 8:15 and think that's acceptable. So it's a funny story and it's done very funny, but I mean, there is a point here.
No, there definitely is. And since Dawn put us in that category, we will pick it up. I think it's only fair. There is a difference, isn't there, in the way that I don't know about our sort of work-life balance, but certainly in the way that perhaps we approach work for our generation.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I think there's probably a bigger gap between millennials and Gen Z. I think the approach of the way we approach life, the way we approach work is massively different. And then if you think of the gap between Gen Z and boomers, I mean, it's massive, no offense, Dawn. But yes, I mean, I can completely see where this article is coming from. Sometimes it does feel like we are all speaking different languages. We all have completely different approaches to life. And actually, I think
reference points, isn't it, often?
That's where a lot of these...
Yeah,
and I think that's where a lot of these cultural wars come from, because people just don't really understand what the other person is saying.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. Oftentimes I'll quote something from a film or a television show that people I work with here in the office have never seen, so I have to make sure that old adverts can be picked up. And I'm not that old. Sometimes I feel it. Yeah,
Me too.
It can be difficult, Dawn.
Wasn't there that survey yesterday that young folk, and I keep going about young folk, didn't recognise some of the great icons? They didn't know who Marilyn Monroe was, or even Nelson Mandela. And it was like, I'm looking to this list going, how can you not know who these people are? But evidently, over 50% of youngsters didn't know these icons.
Yeah, and that can be concerning, can't it, Afua? Because, of course, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat the mistakes of it.
Oh, absolutely. If you don't know where you come from, how are you supposed to know where you're going? Well, on the converse, if you asked me to identify anybody in the top 10 today, I probably couldn't. And I couldn't understand a single word of what they were saying either.
100%. And I would happily say that I wouldn't like any of the music in the top 10 as well, which does date me completely. I'm a little concerned about my little boy. He's going to have a good diet of music, but nothing from year 2002 onwards. All right, Dawn, Afua, really nice to have you both again. Thanks you so much for your time. All right. Plenty more to come here on Sky News Breakfast. We'll go back to Northern Ireland as the vote counting gets underway in those assembly elections, where it is looking like a nationalist party, Sinn Féin, will be the largest party in the assembly for 100 years. A historic moment coming in Northern Ireland. We'll be live in Belfast in a few minutes' time.